Right, today I'm on the Zoom call to Sydney, Australia with Rob Waterhouse. Thanks very much for agreeing to talk to us, Mr. Waterhouse. Um, uh, Third generation of a four-generation bookmaking dynasty. Was there ever any really, were you ever really destined to do anything else?
I think my family would have liked me to have done something else, but I just wanted to be involved with racing. I was fascinated by it. I'd always been hanging around my father's office and helping him do the settling and other chores. So racing was bookmaking, and it was always very much part of my life, even though I wasn't allowed to go to the races till I was 16.
So you were quite aware of what your father did from a very early age?
I was very aware. I used to go to the office every Saturday morning at 8 o'clock and was aware of the form work he'd done and listened to all the calls. We had a phone where I could listen to all his telephone calls. So I was aware of everything he did and how he thought about things right from the start.
Okay, so he took bets off course as well as being a racecourse bookmaker.
Look, there have been a few changes. In those days I'm talking about, it was actually, I don't say it was illegal, but it was certainly wasn't proper to take bets off the course between friends. But Dad used to bet pre-post every day, and it was a big part of his getting his prices right. Okay.
So because of the law, you weren't allowed to start clerking on course until you were 16. Was that
no? I didn't go to the races. My father didn't want me to go to the races until I was 16. And when I was 16, he got permission me as his son to be a clerk at the races. He was supposed to be 18, but I got permission to be a clerk at the age of 16.
Okay, was that something you were counting the days down to do?
Yes, I suppose I was. I suppose I was, especially during school holidays. I used to work, my uncle and cousin were both bookmakers, and I used to work for them on several days, doing every possible job, and not terribly important jobs often, but did every possible job, and I learnt much.
Okay, now I've read your father's book, What Are the Odds, and it mentions in there that you met Phil Bull of Timeform. Now, what was he like?
Yeah. Well, of course, Phil Bull was a character, and he was out in Australia on a tour with the Jockey Club, and Dad invited him for dinner, and also Don Scott, who was, I suppose, Phil Bull's opposite number in Australia, and used to work with my father. And we had a great night out, and I find myself quoting him quite regularly. I remember he said over the dinner, "A horse is a horse. A horse is not its most recent run," which is very wise. I must say, it's stuck in my memory for over 50 years.
Okay, now I also read that you started under your own name at the age of 18. Which seems very, very young, but given that you've had such experience, do you remember the very first day you went to the races to bet under your own name and the first bet you took?
Well, I do, strange enough. I went to Newcastle races on a Saturday, which was, I suppose, very much a provincial meeting, very much a second or third rate meeting. And I was in the outer ring at Newcastle, being my first day. And there was a horse having its second start that was back from double figure odds into odds on, and I managed to see it going off and kept turning my price off, and I caught it. I think I laid 1,000 to 800, which is a very big bet in those days. And I remember I only took $2,000 to the race, which is a lot of money to take to the race in those days. But I was very pleased that I caught it so well. It did get to odds on at one stage, but it did start longer than 5 to 4. It SP'd longer than 5 to 4, and I thought that was a really good job to catch it so well. I was very pleased with myself.
Reading about the betting ring in Australia in those days, it seems like it was a bit of a fairly shark infested. Do you think the pro punters and the big punters saw you as easy meat being that young?
Oh, I'm sure they do. I think everyone that's new is easy meat, but I think I earned their respect quite quickly.
And were there any, not particularly when you were that 18 just starting out, but were there any punters that filled you with trepidation when they came to bet with you?
Well, I suppose it's true to say they were very successful punters. and you're very conscious of them. But I used to find myself trying to lay the horses they weren't wanting to back, and if I saw them backing a horse at longer odds, I'd often turn my price off. I was very aware of them. I don't say I was fearsome of them, and I can remember at times keen for their business, but I was very conscious, very respectful towards, I suppose, the way to say.
Okay, so you would use them as a mark in some ways.
Oh, absolutely, yes. Absolutely. If they were happy to take 4-1 something, why would I want to be giving 4-1 or even 7-2 about it?
Okay, so what would you say would be the biggest chink in a pro-punter's armour?
Well, we have the expression in Australia, I don't know whether it's the same expression in England, of martingaling, where punters often chase their losses, and you'll even see pro-punters at times doing it. And I think that's the biggest chink that a punter can have. I think it's a very serious error.
So you'd give them a go then if you saw they're on the chase, you would open your shoulders a bit and let them.
Well, I was only thinking before without doubt, the most fearsome punter in Australia, who's still alive, so I won't mention his name. He was very hard to beat. I had nothing but respect for him. But of course, twice a year, all of a sudden he'd run hot, to use the expression, and start to chase his losses. And I used to always join in. And I remember complaining about the fact that the only time I really wanted to bet him was when he was chasing.
So a lot of people in the betting ring, you see punters come in with a blaze of glory and go again. How many, in inverted commas, professionals did you see come and go in your time? Well, obviously still doing it now.
Yeah, we call them comets, those people that come and go. And they light up the sky for a short time and then they disappear. I suppose in the good old days, there were so many people who actually earn a living at the races, whereas it has become harder, to the extent that even the successful punters, it's really more a hobby for them, because the betting isn't as big as it once was. Lots of punters earned lots of money at the races in the late 60s, early 70s, middle 70s. That's all disappeared now.
Okay, then we'll talk about form later, but were you always an opinionated bookmaker? Did you go to the races with an idea?
I suppose I went to the races trying to maximise my winnings. And I remember I had employed as a clerk an ex-bookmaker, a man called Harry Broadley. And he said, I think it was very wise advice when I was 18, he said, you've got to make a book where you lay all the runners and get a good feel for it. And then you've got to choose what you want to bet against, and then you lay those. And that's, I suppose, sometimes I see myself as being both things.
Okay, and did you price your own races prior to the racing?
I always priced up. I don't say my prices are always that good, but I always did a set of prices.
And where did you learn that?
Going to the races. I couldn't imagine going to the races without doing a set of prices.
And that's quite a skill to learn. How did you learn that?
Well, I used to watch my father doing markets all the time. The skill is getting the markets right, not actually doing the markets. I suppose just something that you learn over a period of time. And I suppose if you said, what is my skill? I think I'm quite good at thinking how other people might mark up a field and where I think they've got it wrong. I think that's actually my skill. And
just, I know it's a difficult question, but in a nutshell, where would you start?
Oh, you mean in doing a set of prices?
Yeah.
Look, I suppose a crude way of doing it is actually to put down an ordinal number against each runner. In other words, the first pick, second pick, third pick, fourth pick, fifth pick, and so forth. And then to say, take your shorthand way, but this seems to work quite well. Whatever the field size is, divide that by 4, and say that it's a field of 12, divide by 4. That's a 3-1 chance of the favourite, and then go out 3 betting turns for the second favourite, 3 betting turns for the third favourite, and so forth, and then adding it up and seeing how much percentage you have. That gives a reasonable sort of a market.
Yeah, and then once you've done your card, would you take advice from card markers, people that sort of know a little bit extra?
Look, we always had people around us doing form, supplying markets. Often as a way of people got into financial difficulties. Said, look, I've owe you this money. Can I give you a set of prices for the next year or 2 years and call my debt, expunge my debt? So we always had people around us, and one of them, of course, was Don Scott, who wrote many books on form study and was very highly regarded.